Hello, friends. Welcome to the Color Money Podcast. We are very excited today. I'm joined by my co-hosts, Julia Lashay and Daniel Dixon. And today we have the amazing Jonathan Miller here with us. Jonathan is someone that I got the chance to know, and I was like, this is somebody we have to have on the podcast because he's done some amazing things in his life, and how he found himself to real estate and the real estate, the impact he's having in real estate now is really exciting. So Julia told me that I had to read his whole bio because she wanted you to feel the full essence and impact of this man. So before I even get started, I won't do my casual jumping in. I'm going to read the bio. So Jonathan Miller is the CEO and founder of Miller Capital Group. Miller Capital is a real estate investment company based in Atlanta, Georgia, that specializes in the acquisition of cash-flowing multifamily properties. Mr. Miller's got 5 years of real estate investing experience. He currently owns 126 multifamily units in Atlanta, and he's currently refinancing apartment building that he's refinancing, his $4 million apartment building that got appraised at an $8.3 million valuation from bridge to permanent debt as he repositioned it, to just give you a sense of the type of deals he's doing. He's built an amazing vertically integrated real estate company with its own in-house property management, maintenance, and construction teams. One of the great things about Jonathan is he's invested in both multifamily and single family properties, and has taken a really conservative approach to his what we call in real estate development value-added deals. He invested in his first multifamily property back in 2020, and invested in his first single-family home property in 2022. So what I love about Jonathan is he shows what can be accomplished in a very short period of time. We talk a lot on the podcast about being ready for the opportunities that come to you. And Jonathan is someone who has so much preparation in his life that when real estate became an opportunity, he was able to put all of his talents and experience to work in real estate. He plans to acquire another 200 units in Atlanta this year with estimated value over $20 million. But prior to real estate, Jonathan had 15 years of corporate experience. He graduated from Harvard Business School with his MBA. He graduated from Stanford University with a degree in civil engineering, construction, and a minor in Spanish and Portuguese. He's worked at Facebook, Meta, American Express, the Boston Consulting Group, and the United Nations. Mr. Miller's experience focuses on real estate, corporate strategy, strategic thinking, partner management, contract negotiations. He's born and raised in Chicago and lives in Atlanta, Georgia. So, wow, that was a mouthful, but this man has done a lot in his life.
But you see,
my favorite part is like I did a little MBA, a little Spanish and Portuguese, a little civil engineering. Yeah. Oh yeah, Facebook, Meta, American Express, Boston. He worked at every major corporation you heard of in America. This man was corporate. He was corporate, and now he's out here in the entrepreneurial world, and I'm excited to hear his story. So, Jonathan, that was a huge intro, but really welcome and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Bo. I appreciate it.
So let's go all the way back. You have such an amazing sort of professional experience, set of professional experiences. But take us back. How'd you get from Chicago, born and raised in Chicago, Illinois, to Stanford and then to Harvard Business School? So can you tell us a little bit about your journey from childhood to entering the corporate world?
Yeah, definitely. So I'll start. My whole family's born and raised in Chicago. Grandparents born in the projects, parents born in the projects on the south side of Chicago. Both of my parents went to the university, Northern Illinois University, to study. So they both graduated college and moved to the north side of Chicago, which is where I was born. So my whole path is kind of rooted in Chicago. My uncle was a civil engineer in Chicago. He built homes on the south side. He's the reason that I was interested in civil engineering myself, math and science. I was going to go to the University of Illinois in Urbana. That's where all my friends went, or Northwestern. Northwestern was about a mile away from my house. My mom said she was going to come up and, cook for me, do laundry. And I was like, that's a little bit too close for home, to be honest. I visited Stanford, flew out to California for the first time ever. Had never really left Chicago, and just fell in love with the campus, fell in love with the sunshine, fell in love with the down-to-earth people, to be honest, in California. So that's how I got to Stanford, and then studied civil engineering, construction, and then went abroad to Brazil. Got a passport for the first time freshman year of college and went to Brazil, studied abroad there. that's how I got the bug for kind of international business and just learning the language of Portuguese and Spanish. I studied abroad in Chile as well while I was in school. And it wasn't until, to be honest, I got to Atlanta that I decided to jump into real estate. But real estate and construction, my uncle did, and it was something I studied at Stanford, but I didn't take the leap of faith until the pandemic.
So tell us a little bit about that. You were like, you had this, it's like a list of every blue chip corporation in America. Yeah. You had a very successful corporate run. So tell us a little bit about that. And then what prompted you to walk away from all that or move from that into real estate?
I think the pandemic it changed everybody, right? And for me, what it did is I was in New York during the pandemic. My wife was pregnant with our first son. And I looked around and I said, the world's changing. I'm still working in corporate America, but I'm sitting behind a computer, for 2 years straight. This has to change because I feel like I'm kind of boxed in and isolated. Then I forced her to move to Atlanta, where she's from, but she wanted to stay in New York and raise our kids. When I got to Atlanta, I found out that, okay, real estate is actually affordable here in Atlanta, right? In New York, very unaffordable to even buy a brownstone in Harlem, where I used to live. But when I got to Atlanta, there were homes selling, nice homes, 4-bed, 3-bath, selling for $150,000, $200,000. And so I said, while I was actually working my full-time job at Facebook, I was remote, and so I didn't have to go to an office. So I had bandwidth to go look at houses and start to flip them with my construction team. So it was a combination of the pandemic, working remotely, that allowed me to start Miller Capital Properties. But over the last, 5 years, it's been more so about seeing the opportunity for what real estate can do versus working a 9-to-5 and making, lack of Mark Zuckerberg or whoever running these bigger companies rich, right? I'm putting forth effort, but I'm not seeing any like big gains because I'm at a fixed salary.
You mentioned when you were working at Meta or working at Facebook, and then your construction team. Were you already flipping? Did you already have construction team kind of on the side, or how did that come about?
Yeah, great question. I built one here in Atlanta. So stepping back, when I got to Atlanta, I found two mentors. One mentor was doing single family flips. The second was doing apartment acquisitions. Both young men, Black men, same age as me. That was like a criteria I wanted. I wanted someone who looked like me and was doing what I wanted to do. So I found them and I started working with them. They kind of showed me the ropes for both single family flips first. And then I built a set of contractors, plumbers, roofers, electricians by acquiring and then like meeting people on different job sites. And that's how I built the construction team. So on my phone, I've got, all these people who can do all this work for me.
Just, can you go rewind to your thought process? So a lot of people go to start something and they're like, hey, I got to hang my shingle. I got to do my thing. And it sounds like what you just said was the first things I did when I started, I want to be an entrepreneur, was I found mentors and I built a team. Mm-hmm. And was that just natural for you to start there? Or, because a lot of people, a lot of our listeners are running businesses and the idea of like really beginning with mentors and a team is actually something sort of people find their way back to. Like, how'd you start there?
So on the mentorship side, I'm very, very risk averse. I'm very calculated when I do anything. So finding a mentor was a way for me to essentially jump over all of the pitfalls, jump over all of the mistakes that I could make, and basically have someone who has already made those mistakes help me. That was the reason for the mentor. The second point I'll make is I actually spent a year listening to podcasts like this, honestly, like Bigger Pockets. I'm trying to think of some of the other names, but basically I spent a year during the pandemic just kind of like learning through podcasts, and then until I really took the leap of faith with a mentor wasn't until I actually started to execute on anything. So that's just my nature to be very, my dad is a police officer growing up. And so I've always been trained to be very cautious and like, yeah, if I'm going to take a big leap of faith, I'm going to be prepared for it.
How'd you source the mentor?
Instagram, kind of having been working at Facebook, Meta, there's a belief that some of the stuff on Instagram is all, glitz and glamour. It's not real. But I found people here in Atlanta who owned buildings, and then I spent probably 3 to 6 months researching them, honestly, like following them on Instagram, but then also like going to tax code or tax records and seeing if they actually owned any of these buildings that they said they were owning or were flipping.
I mean, you did a lot of homework. And Bo, the reason I asked you to read the entire thing was because I found it fascinating that in just 5 years, he's done so many amazing things in the real estate sector. That's really fast. There's some people who have been in it 20 years and still can't figure it out. But I'm listening to you say that you did a lot of homework. You had mentors. You prepared yourself to make the transition into real estate. And you're doing it full time now. This is your full time gig. This
is my full time gig now. Yeah,
that's good stuff. John Clyde has a book called Leaving Six Figures, and it talks about preparation to take a leap into doing something in real estate. But you were very cautious and researched and did a lot of, I think that's important for people to hear, that you didn't just make a jump like Bo said. You didn't just try to just jump into it. You actually got a mentor, prepared, studied, listened to podcasts, did all the things that most of us honestly don't have the patience to do.
I also didn't quit my 9 to 5 either. I think a lot of people will abruptly just say, I want to be an entrepreneur, but you don't have a fallback. And so having a 9 to 5 and an actual W-2 helped me in real estate, because all of these lenders, were looking at my credit score, were looking if I actually had income coming in, and that actually helped. So I would recommend that if people can keep a 9 to 5 and work on the weekends or work at night to build until you're ready to step away, that's the better approach.
So what does your business look like today? Walk us through what's the business today, what are the different elements, and where do you see that going?
Yeah. So the business today, Miller Capital Properties, is focused purely now on just multifamily. No more single family. That was kind of the entry foray into real estate. So right now we own, as you mentioned in the bio, 157 units, all in Atlanta. And then a lot of my business partners in Atlanta, collectively, we own, I think, maybe like 1,600 units. Wow. All Black men of color in Atlanta, owning these buildings. And the thing that I like the most about it is, prior to us owning these buildings, it was people who didn't look like us, but all the residents look like us. And so when we walk around, they see that there's young, brown and Black ownership.
Can I say something about that real quick? We just recently did a Black History Month panel, and we talked about collaboration and going into partnership with people. A lot of people try to go at it alone. But was this your first multifamily that you immediately went into with partnership with these guys?
I bought was a 40 unit. And I do have a partner. So yes, there's one partner on that 40 unit. And then my wife and I, who is my ultimate partner, put our money into into purchasing the property as well.
Yeah, I think that's important to note. And that's basically what we were speaking about on that Black History Month panel, is the power of collaboration and creating some of this wealth and not trying to take it on all by yourself, but partnering with other people. And Daniel, you mentioned it as well when you were talking about how Gary Keller acquires his businesses and they all have some form of partnership. So I think that's interesting to hear, as well as you've taken that approach and applied the approach of feeling confident. How do you vet the partners did you know these guys before, or how did you vet this partnership and determine it was a good idea to go into business with them?
So the partner, it's actually called The List. That's kind of the name that we're using here in Atlanta. The mentor that I found he started The List. I think when I joined, there was probably 5 or 7 guys who were in the group. So I vetted him quite heavily for like 6 months. Like that's who I vetted.
What do you mean you vetted him for 6 months? Like you followed him around and his car, you put a GPS on him? What do you mean you for 6 months? Yeah.
Almost to that level. So I followed all of the posts that he put on Instagram. I did research on all the buildings that he owned.
Wow.
I drove a lot of the buildings that he owned because I wanted to see if they're legit. Actually, one of the buildings that was how I found out about him is near my son's school here in Buckhead. And I walked past it and I saw it and I noticed it from Instagram. And so that was why I kind of got interested. But yeah, I vetted in terms of just talking to people who I knew. He went to Morehouse. So I talked to people who I knew from Morehouse who had known him in school.
Wow.
So yeah, when I say that I do my research, I do my research.
Yeah,
but I
yeah.
mainly wanted to just see if what he was acquiring and if he really acquired properties, which he did.
What's the, I don't know if, is it like it's so secret society you can't say, but like, what is the list?
Yeah.
What does it do? What does it mean to be? What does it mean to be on the list?
The list. It is no, there's no secret per se. It's a mentorship program that he started. His name is Ed Bolden. He started this group here in Atlanta for men of color because I think he had been spending probably like 8 to 10 years doing this by himself, and he's like the only young Black man who was purchasing properties in Atlanta, and he wanted to essentially see others do the same with him and kind of grow with him. So he started this group, and you join the group, and you basically get access to his deal flow, his the agents and the brokers that he has connections with here in Atlanta, lender connections, and so he helped me close that first deal, the 40-unit deal. And then after that, because I had learned, sitting at the signing table, understanding how he's talking to brokers, I actually closed 2 of my own deals after that by myself, an 86 unit and a 31 unit. So it was kind of like a trial by error, and then now go off and do it on your own. So it really helped me just like jump in without having to get my feet getting my feet wet, but also not making too many mistakes on my own.
Well, take us back to that first acquisition. A lot of people that I've run across, they're so nervous of making a mistake, and like, walk us through that deal. How did you source it? What was the purchase price? What was down payment? What was the debt load? Let's get a little in the weeds a little bit with that one.
So first question you asked was, how do we source it? So it is from broker relationships, so off-market deals. So brokers here in Atlanta, before they put together the fancy deal decks, they'll just have a list of different properties that they're selling. This one is in East Point. I believe the prior owner had sold some other properties to some of my other business partners. So we knew who that owner was. We purchased it for $4 million. So about $100,000 a door. We renovated it. We gut renovated all of the units. We put in LVP flooring, put in stainless steel appliances, new roof, new HVAC, new painted exterior. And then it got appraised. It went from $4 million acquisition to $8.3 million at the appraisal.
Wow.
How much did you spend for that rehab?
It was close to $2 million.
Okay, so
Wow.
created some
$2 million
significant value in that. Yeah.
Yeah. When I tell you that the prior owner was, in my opinion, a slumlord, and I'm saying this from the perspective of my parents and my grandparents living in the projects. Like, this man did not care about these people. They had floors were sinking in, tubs were sinking through the floors, literally. So yeah, $2 million to get it up to code, honestly.
And was that all cash, or was that financed? How did that money get paid?
Financed through the lender loan that we got. Yep.
Okay.
So you had like a acquisition construction, or how'd you structure the capital stack?
Yep. The capital stack was a $4 million acquisition plus the $2 million of renovation budget, but it was all included in the loan that the lender provided to us.
Right.
Daniel, to your question, we put 15% down, which is unheard of, to be honest. I think most commercial real estate lenders that I speak to usually want 25 to 30% down.
Was this private money or was this a unique commercial lender, or what was this relationship?
It is a commercial lender out of Miami that it's called A&S Capital, and the list, to use that term, the list members have utilized A&S Capital for about 15 deals in 2023, 2024.
Okay.
So they were kind of like a preferential lender for us.
Yeah.
Always putting down the 15%, 20% when you include fees and everything. And so I provided the equity from myself and my wife, and then we also raised some equity. My other business partner raised equity as well for his half of the investment, and then
Got
the
it.
rest was provided by the debt from A&S Capital.
You find the deal, you'll find the money, right? And we say that all the time. Find
Yes.
the deal, find the right opportunity, the money will find itself.
Yeah. I think especially lenders want to see, they love Atlanta, number one, right? Atlanta's growing market.
Mm-hmm.
It's got good economics. Number two, if you show them a live deal, you can shop around to different lenders and kind of get different term sheets. But then the third thing, they want to see that you've executed before. And so showing your schedule of real estate really helps to get and close the deal.
You've kind of jumped in and relatively quickly, there's lots of people with 10, 20 years of experience in real estate that haven't accomplished as much as you have. So, but from a banking standpoint, so let's talk a little about financial institutions. And I know you've used a number of different types of debt and things like that, but what do you see them looking at? How are you preparing your company to maximize its opportunity with different debt and equity sources?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that they look at is credit score. So because I worked at American Express previously, I know the importance of maintaining, a fairly pristine credit history. Mm-hmm. My wife tells me this all the time too. It's like she's even better about, she went to Wharton. She's smarter than me. She's really, really good with numbers. And for her, it's like always pay your credit cards down. We actually used to pay our credit cards like debit cards, right? We never carried any balances whatsoever. So that was kind of the first thing, like keep the credit score clean, no delinquencies, etc. Number two is lenders are looking for, I guess, what they call the PFS, the personal financial statement. They want to see assets, liabilities, and that you have a net worth that is worth covering the size of acquisition that you're buying. So we used our house. We bought a house here in Atlanta, which we couldn't have done in New York. That was part of the assets that we had. And then our debt was just so low because of paying off bills, and didn't have any student loan debt because my wife helped pay off my student loan debt from Stanford, to be honest, because she also just did not like having debt. And then I guess the third point is most of the lenders who I go to are looking at the asset themselves and whether or not the NOI can cover the debt service, the debt coverage of the actual loan. So yes, there's like a portion of their process where they're validating whether or not I am a good operator and borrower, but they're also underwriting the deal itself. So I think to Daniel's point, if the deal itself is valid, that's a check for lenders. And then the secondary part is this person that we're lending the money to a valid borrower of the funds? So that's how I think about it. And I know that's how lenders will underwrite me or any deals that I bring to the table.
Wow. And so we think about this cash flow game. Has this been, I mean, flipping and buying multifamily for cash flow are two very different strategies and two very different business models. You're operating in both. Is there a goal that you have for this investment firm? Is a certain return to partners? Is it just a goal you have on acquisition? Like, what does that look like?
I am building, you guys talked about one of your pillars for this entire podcast, like generational wealth, right? Like that's what I'm building. I have two boys. I have a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old, about to be 1-year-old. I am building a company that I can hand to them and a set of assets that I can hand to them. So That's why I exited the flipping single families, because I want to hold everything as much as I can for long-term appreciation. And I want to hand my sons a company in the next 20, 30 years that has assets that have grown. That's first and foremost. That's why I'm doing all of this. That's literally why I wake up every day for my sons. The second point, in terms of returns to investors, I'm actually launching a $25 million fund this year as well, quarter one or quarter two. And the goal of that is to go buy more multifamily assets and provide 8 to 10% preferred returns back to investors. I've had investors for some of these other projects, but now I'm actually creating an entire fund to then go deploy to various assets across a portfolio. So that is important too. Like I don't take anything myself until my investors are satisfied, because I want my name and my like company name to have value when I go back to them for other opportunities. And then last point, the number of units. I mean, I'm at 150 plus right now. I could certainly see a place where I get to 1,000 in the next, call it 3 years. When I hit 1,000 units, I hope to be at a point where I'm actually building ground up development, to be honest. That's the other goal that I have. Again, going back to my civil engineering, I always wanted to build skyscrapers as a kid, being from Chicago, the Sears Tower.
Yeah.
I want to build, and that's the next goal for this company as well.
You have a very conservative approach to things. You did a lot of research. You put the GPS on the guy's car. You followed him and his family around to see if he was a good,
I didn't say any of that.
I know. I'm playing. But you learned some things from doing these, this research and things. What other people who want to be like you, other investors who are considering this, when you were doing your due diligence, when you were doing this research, what things did you find that other people should be aware of?
One that's just coming top of mind is when you're looking at any multifamily asset, all of the financials, T12s, rent rolls that I think owners provide to you, I always not ignore them completely, but I discount them heavily, right? I'm like very, very reluctant when I see a rent roll or a T12 that is like stellar, especially in Class B, Class C properties that I'm looking at. But ignoring that, I think about what the potential is for me to upgrade the properties and then actually have them be self-sufficient and cover debt. So that's one, just be aware of like numbers are important to me for sure. Like numbers are very, very important, but bake into your own underwriting, like discounts on the numbers that you're given. I guess that's like step one for underwriting. Step two, in terms of this whole real estate, I think people say it a lot on a lot of podcasts, but real estate is a team sport for sure. So making sure, I think the two most important people in my company are my property managers and my construction crew. They're the most important. I got to make sure they're happy. I think, I'm the CEO of the company, but I don't treat people any different than, I would want to be treated. And so making sure that they're paid on time, making sure that they have flexibility when they want to go on vacation or take the day off for whatever reason. Maintenance crew as well, like all of these people on your team, like making sure they're happy because they're the ones actually doing the work with tenants on the ground. Like that's the other thing that I would say is really important.
Bo, the other reason I had to read the whole bio was because I can't help but think that your education at Stanford and your MBA from Harvard helped you to be able to be this successful in real estate in 5 years. And the reason I say that is because we've had a lot of conversations about student loan debt and education. And is it valuable to still go to school and get a degree, and we've been, and to be honest, I know myself, I've been discounting it a lot, like that's a waste of money. You could just jump right into real estate. But looking at your bio is the reason I wanted him to read it all, was because in 5 years, you were able to accomplish what most real estate professionals actually never accomplish in their real estate career. And I can't help but think that's because you actually had formal education about business. Would you agree?
No, I would disagree. So
Okay.
the formal education, it can be gotten at any school. You don't even need to go to college, to be honest, to get that sort of education. I didn't study what I'm doing now, right? I didn't study
Sure.
real
Yeah.
estate management. I studied civil engineering, yes, which is tangential, and construction. But
Even
I
that
think
tangential. Most people who didn't go to Stanford or Harvard wouldn't use a word like
100%.
tangential.
I was thinking the same thing. I'm about to Google it right now. Like, it has to do something like in relationship in some capacity, right?
In tandem. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, but
yeah,
sorry, keep going, Jonathan.
all right. It is the real value. Like, I wouldn't have met Bo if I didn't go to Stanford, just to be frank, right? Like,
Sure,
that
yeah.
connection to another person that Bo knew through Stanford, like, number one. Stanford, Harvard opens doors for me that it doesn't for definitely people who look like me, right? Like, that for sure is something. Like, I can walk into a room in New York and say that I went to those schools, and I think I'm given a level of respect, yes, but also just like, okay, now I'm not going to look at like your skin color. I'm going to like think about your mind, and like, okay, this guy might be actually kind of smart. I think that's the value that I got out of those two brands, honestly. But like the actual day to day, what I learned in sitting in a classroom, like doing homework, like, I don't think that's what I paid for. But it was the brands that I for sure think.
Sure, that's good perspective. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, one thing that I would say, like, I wish I would have jumped into real estate earlier, because I think also going to these schools and like going to the companies that I went to hindered me in a sense, because it made me climb a corporate ladder that those schools kind of like guide you towards. Whereas I've now learned in the last 5 years, I've met so many people, especially in Atlanta, who are just they're like grinding, like doing their thing, entrepreneurial thing. They didn't go to school, but like they just grind every day. And like, I don't think that formal education teaches you how to do a very traditional set of things, doctor, lawyer, CEO, but it doesn't teach you how to grind in the same way that just executing.
Okay, so I can still keep waving my entrepreneurship flag, because I'm heavy on the entrepreneurship flag in the trade schools. Yeah.
Part of that, and it's like kind of working off this education theme. What are the things that you still think, as you build from where you are today, if you want to go from 100 units to 1,000, 10,000 units, what are the things that you feel you still need to learn? Like, what are the areas of learning that you're still pursuing for yourself as you try to grow your company?
Number one is fundraising. That's probably the most important thing. Like, learning how to one, meet the right people who are going to be behind you, and like either passive or active investors. Like, figuring out how to do that and fundraise properly is number one. Number two, now that we've done the acquisition, I know how to acquire, I know how to get lenders to lend. Now it's all about asset management, making sure to keep the properties stabilized over a 10-year period. Learning the right, I have Appfolio, which is my property management system, but I'm sure there's other pieces of technology that I could be using to just make sure that I'm stabilizing all these properties properly. Because my goal with all the properties, like I mentioned, is to keep them long-term, take them to agency debt with Fannie and Freddie, right? Like, that's the goal for all of these properties. Yeah, fundraising, asset management. Last thing probably is, this is kind of related to fundraising, but just like getting more so in the community. So Atlanta, let's talk about Atlanta. Like, and it's amazing. And it's why I moved here. It is the government, the mayor is Black. A lot of the city council is Black. And I think we have a unique opportunity to actually start partnering with the city of Atlanta. There's some people that I admire here who have just gotten large contracts with the housing authority here in Atlanta. Like, I want to be that sort of person. Like, I need to start going and meeting people in the Atlanta political scene, or people who look like me who are doing this already. So that's something else I gotta not learn, but I have to take the initiative and learn and put myself out there in the Atlanta business scene, essentially.
We've talked a lot on the podcast about sort of understanding your strengths and weaknesses. And as you've been building your company, have you gotten any new insights into like sort of your capabilities, and how has that influenced how you build out your team to like augment maybe your strong areas or your weak areas as you move forward?
I know my strengths and weaknesses, especially being an entrepreneur, for sure, like what my breaking points are. So for example, my wife is the CFO of our company. And I know she's always been like, she does all of our taxes for us. She does, that's just something that she naturally gravitates towards. I'm very, very good at math as well, but she's on another level, right? I knew that when I married her, and I know that as we're business partners as well. So that's one of the strengths that she has that is not a weakness of mine, but is definitely something that she excels in. I'm also, one of my weaknesses is I have the ability to be extroverted, but I'm an introvert, to be honest. I enjoy spending time with my family and my kids. And like I mentioned, related to my other point of like getting out and meeting people in Atlanta, like that's not something that I naturally will gravitate towards. And so one of the things that I probably need to do is like figure out, like, I don't know, maybe it's like a VP of like relations or something who's like out talking to people in Atlanta and like, branding the name of Miller Capital. Because I could probably do it, but it would take a lot of energy out of me. It would drain a lot of energy for me to like be at, receptions, dinner parties, all of that, especially when I just want to spend time with my little kids, my sons. So yeah, there's things that I'm like, as I grow and build the company, that you want to hire people who are smarter than you, for sure, like at whatever, or good at what they do. I don't think any of us can take on everything by ourselves. And so, yes, I know that in order to scale, you're going to have to get good people who are experts, and you got to give them autonomy as well. Give them autonomy to do what they need to do.
Yeah, Jonathan, how big is your organization?
We have myself, my wife, CFO, and then contracting team. I have like a head of construction, but he's got like 60 people who are contractors under him. And then property managers, we've got one per building, so 3. And then we've got maintenance people for each of those buildings as well. So corporate, we're probably like 5 right now. And then the whole construction, property management, maintenance team is closer to 60 to 80 people.
Jonathan, like, it's been great having you. I really hope that we can like circle back, because I have a feeling that your organization is on a trajectory that's going to be pretty impressive. And I'd love to see 5 years from now where you are. Maybe as we close out, what would be your advice? Like, there's a lot of folks in our audience who are thinking like, wow, this is a great story. Jonathan seems like a great guy, but I didn't go to Stanford. I didn't go to Harvard Business School. I didn't have these things. Like, how do I get started? So what would be your advice to someone who's saying, I want to build a portfolio of real estate that I can pass on to my kids too? What would be the things that they should be thinking about to get started in that journey?
Number one is find the mentor. Find someone that you think either looks like you or is doing the things that you want to do in the next 5 years, like, and just take them to coffee, send them an email, hit them up on Instagram. Like, that's number one. Number 2 is just, I don't want to say like just jump in straight and execute, but like a lot of what I didn't do early enough was jump in, and more so just like think in my head about how to execute things. You don't learn anything until you actually like take it on, to be honest. So I would say, jump in the waters and, smartly, maybe you go buy a small single family house, you renovate it, you see how much effort that takes. Because to be honest, we didn't talk about this, but to go from single families to multifamily is the same. It's the same renovations. It's the same contractors. It's just at a different scale. And so it's not a huge leap of faith. And also to go from a 40 unit, which I first started with, to an 86 unit, I was, to be honest, very afraid of. But the 86 unit is actually easier because it's got more tenants in there who can cover the debt. It's got, if you're a little bit unoccupied, it's okay. So going a little bit bigger actually helps. And then the last thing is, you don't need, Julia, you asked about the formal education. The formal education is only needed for certain aspects of this business, but real estate, to be honest, is something that anybody can do. Real estate is, I think the reason I like real estate so much is that you don't have to have gone to Harvard or Stanford to actually to do it yourself. All you need is the grit, know-how, and somebody to teach you how to do it. But it's one of the few industries and jobs that I've ever had where I didn't actually need my like educational background. To be honest, every other job I've had has required it, but real estate is the only one that has not required it.
Super great to have you.
Thank you.
And I think you guys probably have heard it here. I think you're going to look back on your opportunity to get to know Jonathan Miller, who's going to be a huge leader in the real estate space in the years to come. So thank you, Jonathan, for joining us. We're excited, and we'll have to have you back in a little bit of time to hear about all the great things you have going on.
All right. Thank you, guys.
This podcast is for general informational purposes only. The views, thoughts, and opinions of the guest represent those of the guest and not KWRI and its affiliates, and should not be construed as financial, economic, legal, tax, or other advice. This podcast is provided without any warranty or guarantee of its accuracy, completeness, timeliness, or results from using the information.